Hi, welcome back. In this clip we're going to talk about conventional current versus electron flow. Now you probably know that electricity is the flow of electrons, so that electrons moving from one atom to the next down a wire generates your electricity. And yet we talk about electricity flowing from positive to negative, even though electrons are negative and they're moving from negative to positive. I know this can be very confusing, so I'd like to kind of go over what's going on. First of all, what's going on is electricity had been discovered and used and experimented with for over 100 years before we even knew what an electron was. So over that century or more, there had been a whole bunch of terminology in terms of what to call things. They couldn't just call things the place and the other place where current goes, and they didn't know what current was. So they just kind of made up terms and they said, well, we'll call it going from here to here, we'll define it as going from here to here, and then they could work with it. Now it turns out in 1899, when J.J. Thomson discovered the electron, that they figured out finally what electricity was, and that electricity is the movement of electrons, but electrons move in the opposite direction. Is this a big deal? Does it really matter? Did they have to go back and change everything in electricity and say, oh, hey, we got it wrong. Let's just go back and rewrite all of the engineering textbooks and all of the physics textbooks, and we will just reverse the direction of electricity. No, they didn't, because they could stick with what worked and just keep things the way they were by convention. That's why it's called conventional current, because by common consent, by common convention, they just stick with what they've got. Some people ask me, why don't we just change it? Isn't it entirely wrong? And the answer is no, because when electricity was defined, we didn't know what it was. So it was defined as the movement of electric charge, not of electrons. So while the actual electrons are the actual particles actually moving down the wire, the definition of electricity is the flow of positive charge. So, is this wrong? Not really, because allow me to explain. If I take a metal bar, and I were to take that metal bar and stick it in a bucket of ice, and then image it with a thermal camera, like a Mythbusters camera or something, which unfortunately I don't have, we would see the cold rising up the metal bar, right? Until it reaches my hand and I can feel the cold. Sure, not a problem. Except that there's no such thing as cold. Cold is simply the absence of heat. So what's happening is the heat is leaving the bar, going into the ice water. So in fact, there is no cold rising up. There is simply heat leaving the bar down into the water. And yet, when we image it, we can clearly see cold moving up the bar, and we can feel cold moving up the bar, so we feel perfectly justified in describing that as the movement of cold up the bar. Likewise, another analogy would be if I have two glasses, and I have water in this one, and I have this one is apparently empty, and I transfer water from one to the other, we can clearly see that the water has moved from the glass in my right hand to the glass in my left. But what if we defined electricity as the movement of air? Then what's happened is this one started full of air, this one with practically none, and when we're done, this one has no air, and this one is full of air. So really, by pouring water from this glass to this, I have transferred air from this glass back to this one. And that's really what we're doing when we're talking about conventional current. We're simply talking about the flow of positive charge from positive to negative, the absence of electrons, not the movement of electrons themselves. I hope you found this clip informative. If so, you might want to check out some of my other videos, or subscribe to my channel, or leave a comment below.